Well, in this Atheist Sunday School, of course, we're continuing on favorite Bible chapters. We'll do the book of Jonah, lesson 43, and, of course, 2 Chronicles 34, lesson 44. Almost done. Seems like no matter what, there's always 20 more. Introduction. Nineveh was a wicked Gentile city. Jonah was a Jew who was called of God to preach a revival in Nineveh and to cry aloud against her iniquities. Of course, you go to King James Bible Online.org if you want to see these verses. It's amazing how quickly God just wants to just completely kill, murder everybody. You're not doing what I want, someone's going to slaughter you all. Sounds like a psychopath. Really, if you think about it, if he was real, he's a psychopath. 1. Jonah's first call, Jonah 1:3. But Jonah rose up to flee unto Tarshish from the presence of the Lord, and went down to Joppa, and he found a ship going to Tarshish. So he paid the fare thereof, and went down into it, to go with them unto Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. And he fled to Tarshish, not being willing to accept the call of God to preach in Nineveh. Jonah went to Joppa and fled to Tarshish. To say the least, he got on a ship to get away from God's will. B. Notice the words, from the presence of the Lord. How do you leave God's presence? God's presence is left when God's will is left. God meets you where he wants to meet you. Jonah left the will of God. See, notice the words went down. One always goes down when he leaves the will of God. D. Notice the words, so he paid the fare. When a person goes into sin, he must pay a price for it. So if you go to the beach, movies, because they consider all that sinning, you're paying a price for all that. E. Notice the words went down are mentioned again. He went down, paid the fare, and kept going down. When one goes into sin, he keeps going down. And everything is a sin. Remember that. 2. Jonah's punishment. A. The storm came. Jonah 1:4. But the Lord sent out a great wind into the sea, and there was a mighty tempest in the sea, so that the ship was like to be broken. Storms always come into our lives when we leave the will of God. Jonah is in the tempest, in the storm on the sea. And this is what I like here. All of a sudden, instead of just punishing Jonah, this God tries to kill everybody on the freaking ship. B. The mariners cast lots. Jonah 1:7. And they said, every one to his fellow, come, let us cast lots, that we may know for whose cause this evil is upon us. So they cast lots, and the lot fell upon Jonah. That's like the dumbest way to do it, because someone's going to get the shortest stick or whatever. And you're going to say it's that person's fault. What if that person's completely innocent? It makes no damn sense. But of course, these are primitive people, so I wouldn't expect them to make sense. They would cast lots to find out who the guilty party was by using stones or pieces of wood. They would get several stones, put a mark on one of them, shuffle them up, and pass them out. The person who drew the stone with a mark on it was the one they felt was the guilty one. This is much like what we call drawing straws. Of course, anyone who does this is an idiot. See, Jonah was cast into the sea. Jonah 1:15. So they took up Jonah and cast him forth into the sea, and the sea ceased from her raging. D. Jonah was in the belly of the great fish. Jonah 1:17. Now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah. And here's what, when you try to argue with Christians or Jews, hey, a fish can't swallow a man whole. There really aren't any whales that can either. Even the biggest ass ones would not really be able to swallow a human. You can actually look this up. They'll say, well, God prepared this fish. That's why Jonah was in its stomach for 3 days and 3 nights and then get digested and survived because God willed it. And Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. 3. Jonah's second call. Jonah 3:1. And the word of the Lord came unto Jonah the second time, saying, it is wonderful that God calls the second time. Think how many people in the Bible God called the second time. He is long-suffering and patient. He will not always linger, but he will call the second time. And he will slaughter you too. A. Jonah's hurry. Jonah 3:3-5. Notice that it was a 3-day journey to Nineveh. Then notice that Jonah made it in 1 day. He wasn't in a hurry to get back in the will of God. People should be encouraged to get into the will of God early in their lives. They should run to God's will and not linger. B. Nineveh's revival. Jonah 3:5-10. What a revival. From the king all the way down to the beast, there was revival. This was a huge city. And I wonder if there's any evidence of this even happening. I doubt it. In Jonah 4:11, we find that there were 120,000 people in Nineveh who could not tell their right hand from their left. Maybe these were children. 3 and under 4 and under 2 and under, but whatever age, think how many others there must have been. Some say this meant there were 600,000 in Nineveh. Some say there were as many as 3 or 4 million people in Nineveh. Perhaps Nineveh was as big as Chicago, Philadelphia, and Detroit. Think of a revival breaking out in one of our big cities to the extent that Nineveh felt it. Imagine all of a sudden Chicago all of a sudden had the crime rate plummet from being number 1 in the nation to 0. There's no doubt that this was the greatest revival that any one city has ever had in the history of mankind. And it never, hopefully will never happen again, because we do not need people going back into ignorance and superstition. Jonah's sin. Jonah 4, here's his tragic story. Jonah had preached, revival had come, but now he was sad. He felt that God had forsaken him because he had predicted that God would overthrow Nineveh. When Eva repented and God did not overthrow her, Jonah was sad. He did not have real, sincere compassion. May God give us compassion for our cities, our country, and the people of the world. Memory verse. And of course, you listen to these Christians, though, when they talk to people about their religion, they're actually kind of happy to tell people, well, you're going to go to hell. You don't believe me, you're going to hell. Well, what if you're wrong? Especially Muslims. Memory verse. Jonah 1:17. Now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah. And Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Here, 2 Chronicles 34, lesson 44. Introduction. This chapter deals with a revival, which took place during the reign of King Josiah. Though God's people were experiencing revival, they needed a prophet to warn them of sin. It is interesting to note that the minor prophets of Hosea through Zephaniah all dealt with the period of time before the captivity. However, there are at least 3 different types of prophets. 1, some of the prophets warned Israel while she was innocent that she would be punished. 2, some of the prophets lamented since judgment had already been pronounced. There was no way that God would change his mind, and the prophets lamented. 3, Zephaniah had a unique place among the prophets. During the period before captivity, he prophesied during a time of revival. Josiah was the king, and the revival was in progress. Zephaniah prophesied to the people who are righteous, warning them of what would happen if they drifted from God. In the book of Ezekiel, and of course if you read the book of Isaiah and the book of Ezekiel, you'll realize that the Jewish Armageddon is different than the Christian one. And the Jewish Armageddon were all basically worshiping them and all this stuff, worshiping the Jews and be their servants. Ezekiel was given 2 commissions from God. 1, to warn the wicked man to turn from his wickedness, and 2, to warn the righteous man not to go into wickedness. Medical science would call this preventive medicine. Zephaniah prophesied to the people during the revival about what would happen if they turned away and went back into sin. There are 2 things that the church is supposed to do. 1, reclaim the sinner who has gone deep into sin, and 2, help the person who has not gone into sin to avoid its pitfall. Sin is not supposed to be condemned only when it's present. We are supposed to warn people of sin. Zephaniah was doing that, what we try to do for our young people who have not yet tasted the bitter end of sin. He was reminding the people never to go into sin in the first place. There were revivals, yet the awfulness of sin was exposed so that people would stay away from it. It is wonderful for us to hear the testimony of people who have been delivered from deep sin. It is indefinitely more wonderful for us to hear the testimonies of people who have never gone into deep sin. This is what we want for our young people. Let us notice this time of revival during the reign of Josiah. Some interesting and needful lessons may be gained from the teaching of 2 Chronicles 34. 1. Josiah was only 8 years old when he took power. 2 Chronicles 34:1. Hence Josiah had to have much counsel. He was a young child king. His priest Hilkiah was his great counselor. Josiah could have said that he could make his own, but he realized his need for counsel. If you get a chance, I suggest you read Plato's Republic, because one of his, and other works. Get this one here if you can. It's, I don't know. It has the Republic, the Symposium, Parmedia. It's Erythro, Apology, Crito, and one more. I can't see it because there's a sign over it. But one of them, that Athens and Sparta are, they're basically what you call them? Darn it. Philosophers from Sparta and Athens. They're arguing. One, Athens is, a democracy. Sparta has kings and queens. So The guy from Sparta, the philosopher from Sparta, from Athens, tells the guy from Sparta, like, well, you got to take orders from the boy whose balls have not dropped yet. And think about that. 2, Joseph did right and walked straight. 3, idols were broken. Joseph destroyed the idols, blah, 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 blah. Nothing should come before Christ, is what they're going to tell you. 4, Joshua had the temple repaired. 5, the Bible was found. 2 Chronicles 34:14. Here's the interesting thing. The Word of God had been lost inside the house of God. While they were cleaning up the house of God, they found the Bible. This is always the case. When the house of God is full of sin and filth, the Bible is lost. When cleansing comes, the Bible always becomes important again to the people. It is said that the Bible can be lost in the house of God. Revival is always built around the Bible. And if you want to read 2 Chronicles, and read around 34. It kind of it tells you, the scroll was lost and they found the law of Moses on that stuff. Kind of makes you wonder if Hezekiah actually wrote it himself, and maybe a few of his little scribe prophet friends, preacher friends, and then said that it was lost and made it, because even today we can make papers and scrolls and stuff look older than what they are. I'm sure they could do it back then, and they convinced these people, and that's how we got the law of Moses and stuff. I just wonder. Because there's no evidence of this Moses in Exodus. 6, the people realized their sin. 7, people made a covenant with God. Memory verse, 2 Chronicles 34:1. Joseph was 8 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned in Jerusalem 130 years. Thank goodness it is over. I'm talking about this, not his reign. Bye.